I'm going to ask you all, who recycles? Do you recycle? And you all put your hands up. Then I'm going to ask who doesn't recycle. So you won't put your hands up then. But can I make the point that thinking, when you listen to all the David and the other speakers, start thinking in your mind about recycling, because I think it's very important that you all gain a thought about what recycles. Do you all recycle your plastic and your cardboard and anything else? What do you recycle at home? Quick, anybody? No, you must recycle something at home.
Glass.
Yeah? Glass, right, okay, very good. And do you recycle at work as well? Do you put your cans in a bin? Yeah. So we all recycle, and we're in a recycling world. The clothes that you're probably wearing today are probably recycled from other elements, right? M&S, something like that. This carpet, if it's Milliken carpet, it's actually 80% recycled. In fact, there's a contract where the carpet had been taken away every 5 years, recycled and brought back, and you never pay for it. So we're in a recycle world, and I think John will mention that what work that RAP's doing is very much recycling, and it's very, very heavy in the construction industry. So the first thing is recycling all the time. Think what you do personally to recycle. Recycling and reuse is sustainable, and sustainability is the heart of what the government's trying to do and what we're trying to do in the building industry. Hence, a good point from David is the fact that I thought at one stage that the low waste repository would actually close because it was full, but by bringing through a sustainable policy, as David was saying, it's going to be available now till 2021-10. So sustainability works. It provides economic values, work social for the community up at Sellafield and that area, and it's economic and it's a good environment as well. So those three key points of sustainability has really benefit the low waste repository, I believe it. And that diagram where you showed with the future, I think, and the same goes for Sellafield as well. One thing we're doing at Sellafield is looking at design of our buildings. And one thing we're doing is we're designing for decommissioning. We're getting a lot of new buildings now. The client's saying we want it for 80 or 100 years. So if you're in the construction industry, how would you design a building that has to last for that long when manufacturers on materials can only guarantee 20, 30 years on their materials? So have a think about that. What would you do? So what we are trying to do, we're trying to actually look at, can we decommission the buildings, which is a sustainable way at the end of their life, and we're talking about 60, 70 years ahead. But look at the materials. Can these materials be replaced? So can the carpet be replaced? We know that from offices they're replaced. Can the external envelope be replaced? That lasts 30, 40 years. We can't really get a guarantee longer than that. So if you want 80 years, you've virtually got to go back to your building, take the external envelope off and replace it. And how would you actually do that? So this is the current thinking, and it's very sustainable. Right. So what I want to talk about in my slot today is what's happening at Sellafield. Well, you all know where Sellafield is. Anybody who doesn't know where Sellafield is, not been watching much TV for it. Sellafield is at Cumbria. It's been a site that's been operational since the Second World War, where it was a munitions factory. Anybody know why Sellafield was used as an ammunitions factory in the Second World War? Very good. Give that man a prize. Yes, they found that the position of Sellafield was too far for the German bombers, so they could actually make the munitions without any worry about being bombed. That's the true fact. So here we are at Sellafield. We've got something like 2,100 buildings existing. Fair proportion are active, in other words, for active reprocessing or storage or whatever, as Dave was saying. Looking at the buildings that's going to be brought down, we've potentially got something like 2 million cubic metres of waste concrete arising during that long period to 2110 or wherever. And Dave was saying as well, the bulk is likely to be clean or exempt waste. This is concrete that we cast 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. And again, David, you talk about clean buildings. This is clean concrete. It's actually exempt. It's actually maybe very, very low level waste. But there it is there in a pile. Okay? So we've got a lot of it. It's going to be clean, exempt waste. And we're unable to avoid waste production. So we know it's going to come now or in the future. We know it's in existence and we can reuse it. We know we can reuse it. I think this is fairly familiar to most people, is the waste management hierarchy. It's an established principle and it's the cornerstone of waste management legislation. I believe this is actually outside the nuclear fence and in the nuclear fence as well. It's the UK-wide. And it's the most preferred option is the highest. The least preferred option is the lowest. So just by disposal of the material is not the sustainable way. The maximum conservation is avoidance and minimisation. And just think about sustainability. If we're not doing this, we're not providing assurance to our generation, where they work at Sellafield, our children, our children's children, etc. What are they going to think about us in 2100 if we don't do it now? So that's sustainability. So a little bit of what we've been doing at Sellafield, and it's still very early days, work in progress. This is a new building on the bottom left. It's a medical centre. Apparently it's for contaminated occurrences, so I probably shouldn't have said that. But basically it's a non-active building. It's a medical centre. We did some demolition of a similar porta cabin building, and we used some material, some RCA material to do the hard standing for the materials. These are all factory build, porta cabin, modular buildings brought to site. Again, it's lean and sustainable. And but in fact, I found out that we actually exported some of the hardcore out, and this has been brought back to be used for the aggregate for the base. And this could have been an example for the RAP quality protocol. We could have actually used that as an example. And I think hear more about that later on. Another example of reuse of waste concrete. I don't know whether you might remember, but the Calder nuclear reactor stopped a few years ago, and that left us with 4 cooling towers. And in September, I think it was 2009, we demolished them by blowing them up. Did anybody see that on TV at the time? That's a good idea, blowing up something on a nuclear site. That was mind-changing, wasn't it? So here was the basin. Oh, was it? There we are. There's the basin. You can see the circular nature of the site there. There's the chimney there, and there's more of the Sellafield buildings. So the concrete cooling basins, we were very fortunate that we had a basin underneath each cooling tower. We'd stripped out all the wood and stuff like that. And in fact, when they'd blown up, they all came down and we put them in the basins. And then we went through the process of actually taking the rebar out and the concrete and crushing the concrete further, which could be used elsewhere on site. Possibly some of the rebar may have gone off site to go through the metal recycling, probably into the local industry as well. And the other example here is this area here, where we had to get vehicles to get to the cooling towers. So we built a haul road, and the material for the haul road was recycled aggregate. That's bricks and things that we took from not needed buildings in North Group, which is mainly brick, block, and other materials. So that's an example of recycled aggregate. We also did a trial on sea-line concrete covers. These were ones that were not needed anymore. And we had a gentleman called Eric Miller who did some work on that and found that the aggregate used in the concrete, which was whinstone aggregate, is very, very hard, good aggregate. And that report underwrites the reuse of recycled concrete aggregate for the future. And we identified other possible uses, so that's still in the programme. So we've got large amounts of potential reuse of construction concrete, that's quite clear. We now have a new building programme to support the decommissioning of Sellafield. We're working for the NDA under contract, but we need new buildings. There might be storage buildings or process plants or whatever, and those are going to replace some of the older plants we've got on site. So we've got an opportunity for new build to embrace best practice in waste management. That's a clear opportunity. One of the problems we possibly got is, as you know, we're on on a marine exposed site up in Cumbria, and one thing we found is that chlorides have been building up on our exposures as it's a marine climate over the last 60 years. So we've got to look at that, maybe one of the technical issues that we may need to look at for an answer. Demolition of iconic nuclear structures. If you look at it, the skyline of Sellafield, you'll see the Adamson fast reactor, breed reactor Wago, which is being decommissioned. The pile chimneys, one's actually now been demolished. The other one will be demolished in the next few years. And again, what we were saying before is that the demolition material will be exempt of very low level waste. We have a standard, or there is a standard, BS 85002, offers a specification to identify the quality and uses of recycled concrete aggregates. This is one specification that in our organisation and capability, our concrete experts and our structural engineers use that to ensure we can reuse the concrete correctly. There's also a vast range of recycled aggregates, all-encompassing guides for use of RC is yet to be determined. So we're on our way, it's work in progress. So what are the difficulties? What we're saying is that RA and recycled concrete aggregate are not permitted as aggregate for use in structural concrete, shielding concrete. We actually can't make a case for that. Whether we can in the future, I don't know. But both recycled aggregate and recycled concrete aggregate may be used for non-structural purposes. So we can use it for mass concrete fill. We can use it for supporting hard landscaping. Road sub-bases, blinding, screeds and fill are all applications which could meet some specification. Now trending is a big word at the moment, but we're not trending. We haven't got a trending in Sellafield at the moment. Basically because A, we haven't got a timeline for building demolition, so therefore we don't know what supply of RCA we will have. On the other hand, we haven't got the supply, so we're still on this early building programme. If I missed out any points on that one. But what we have been doing is we've been using recycled aggregates such as PFA and GGBS. We can actually be using PFA up to 40% of the content and up to 70% for GGBS. That's well established. In fact, we've been doing this since 1983, so it's our current practice. That's a picture of GGBS going into one of our buildings at Sellafield. I apologise, it's a poor picture. And finally, a little bit of information on my thanks to National Nuclear Laboratory at Sellafield. This is work that's being performed by them with funding provided through the NDA's direct research portfolio. And the NDA are hoping that this project can be progressed next year. It's actually to do with when we actually, medium active waste is encapsulated in concrete in like big large milk churns, and we usually cast concrete at the top to hold before we lid it. Now what a colleague of mine, Butcher's doing up at Sellafield is, and this is an illustration only, an actual picture, of whether we can use fine recycled concrete aggregate for use in there. So if we can actually reuse some of the aggregate coming from our buildings on the demolition and aggregate, the crusher will crush it very fine aggregate, we can actually use that material rather than bring in a virgin aggregate as well. So this is very early days at the moment. I think, and my last slide is some of the discussion issues which perhaps we might want to take forward. We know that low level waste repositories apply a sustainable principle of waste. We're doing so as well, so we're working in line with them. We believe that recycling reuse on nuclear sites is a preference from the regulators, and I've been talking to Paul Robinson earlier on that. So Environment Agency, hopefully the NDA, NII and other regulators, it's the way forward. But one of the questions is, what's the quality of the aggregate rising? We haven't been testing our aggregate. We know it's good quality stuff, Windstone, but we need to do the testing. So if we're looking at a contractor on site wanting to take some of our aggregate from buildings, as recycled aggregate, will they take responsibility for the RCA, or will they say, right, well, I'll rather bring it in from outside because you may have an aggregate certificate, you might be to British standards, etc., etc. So we have to go through that hoop as well, I think. We've also got an uncertain supply for increasing number of new construction projects. Can we match the supply of the RCA that we produce on our site with the amount of construction, with the demand that we may well have? That's something we need to look at. And of course, we're, as I said before, there's a potential there for bringing fine RCA into actually the process of reprocessing. I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening.